Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of FedScoop's Government Technology Webinar Series, sponsored today by Appian. I'm your host, Wyatt Cash, the Vice President of Content Strategy at FedScoop and Scoop News Group. And today we take a look at managing mission programs in the Agile age. Joining us today are two government IT leaders who've tackled some of these issues and have kindly agreed to share some of the key lessons they've learned. First, I'm pleased to welcome John Booth, Director of Website and New Media Group at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services at the Department of Health and Human Services. Welcome to the program, John.
Thank you.
And great. And then also joining us today is Christopher O'Connell, Vice President Public Sector at Appian Corporation. Welcome to the program, Chris.
Thank you, Wyatt. Appreciate it.
And I also want to welcome our audience, including those joining us live today, as well as those tuning into our archived on-demand edition of this program. And again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Appian, for making today's program possible. Before I begin, just like to give our audience a quick chance to get familiar with our console and how they can participate today. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets which you can use. If you have any questions for our presenters during the webcast, and we do encourage them, click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. And we'll try to answer as many of those during the live webcast as we can, either during the presentation or towards the end of the program. By the way, a copy of today's entire slide deck will be available in the resource list widget, which looks like a folder at the bottom of your screen. And if you want to adjust the size of the slide area, you can do so by clicking on the Maximize icon at the top right of the slide area, or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area on your screen. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon on it, and it covers a lot of the common issues, but it should be smooth sailing today for most of you. Finally, I want to make sure you know there is an on-demand version of this webcast that we will be making available approximately a day from now, and it will be available for up to 90 days. And it can be accessed using the same link that was sent to you via email confirming your registration. And if you have colleagues who might benefit from today's presentations, we encourage you to share that link with them so they can also kind of take advantage of the material that we're presenting today. So let's get started. John, you've been working on ways to improve how your organization deals with Agile development. Tell us a little bit about your experience at CMS and a few of the biggest takeaways that you've learned.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our experiences here at CMS, where I run the Web and New Media Group. And what we're responsible for is CMS's public website program, which includes a number of very large, very high-profile, very high-traffic websites. Those include healthcare.gov, medicare.gov, mymedicare.gov, cms.gov, and several others. And we've been, over the past couple of years, in the process of rolling out an Agile program, maturing that program, and broadening the scope of that program. And so that's what I'm going to talk through today. Our path to Agile, we started about 5 years ago. We started small, really focused on development and estimation, and what that meant for us is that we would measure the work that we were doing in story points. We would create user stories for the work that we were going to do. We would assign those to backlogs, and we would manage the backlog by putting those user stories into 2-week sprints and allocating the work over those 2-week sprints. And that was very successful for us, and so we've decided to really build on that and to move the program to Agile as opposed to just having the development be Agile. And so, what we're focused on now is really sort of 4 areas of immediate attention, and then I'll talk at the end about some areas of longer-term interest for us. But specifically what I'll talk through today are how we're putting Agile into our contracting process, how we're standing up a set of standardized tools to help the Agile development teams, how we have implemented a DevOps process internal to our organization, and how we're sort of transforming the culture. And by culture, I mean, not only the internal federal team, but our contracting teams as well. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of those. And so, the work that we have been doing on contracts is focused on a couple different areas. So the first is as we are awarding new contracts, as we are recompeting contracts, we are building into those a standard set of SLAs, so service level agreements. And those are based on performance metrics so that we have the ability to measure what our teams are doing, to give the contractors, a concrete set of metrics that we will hold them accountable to, and defining the way that we're going to measure those. In addition, we're looking to move towards sort of smaller awards than we've done in the past, and sort of separating out the build of a brand new tool, some project that doesn't exist yet, and then the operation and maintenance activities associated with those things that are already in existence. And in addition to that, tied up with the notion of these small awards, we're looking to begin building out prototypes or proof of concepts on a project before moving forward with a decision to do a full build. And we're in the very early stages of that, but we've had some successes there. And another thing that we are doing is we're looking to sort of stand up a team, a contract team of Scrum Masters and project managers that can really work across different development teams, and to establish a set of shared resources that can support consistency across all of the work streams that we have going on. And I'll talk about this a couple of times during the presentation, but one of the things that we have found is that standardization of some really sort of key things around process and tools, removes sorts of decisions and arguments about which tools to use and which process to use, and actually enables us to be more agile on the development side, where we really want to be focusing our attention. So that'll be sort of a consistent theme throughout my presentation. The next slide I want to talk about is how we've looked to implement some reusable tooling across the teams. And so what we are doing is essentially setting these up as shared services that multiple development teams can use. So when a development team comes in, I've got a couple examples here. There's probably a little bit more than this, but for version control, we have an on-premise version of GitHub Enterprise, and then we use github.com as well, in particular for projects that we might be open sourcing. We have a set of ALM, application lifecycle management tools, and in our case, we've picked Jira and Confluence, and we use those to track issues, user stories, documents, defects, sprints, and our longer-term planning roadmaps are all tracked through those tools. And in particular, we're spending a lot of time working on refining the project structure for the Jira projects and getting that to a standardized approach. And what that will enable us to do, which has been a challenge for us in the past, is to look at success at a project level. So we can look at a project and see how that's tracking. Is it sort of green, yellow, red status? To go one click up from there to a program. And in our world, a program sort of maps to a website. So Medicare.gov would be a program. It has multiple projects happening underneath of that. And then at the portfolio level as well, which is to look across our entire body of work. And then we're also doing a lot with chat ops, and we're using HipChat for that. So we create working rooms for each of these projects, and the team can be working and they're collaborating with a great deal of transparency across the teams. One of the things I'll mention, so I think this particular tool set is working really well for us. I think tools are something that a team needs to make a decision on what works right for them. And I would say it's more important that you have a set of tools as opposed to, saying that these are the right tools for every team. But again, we've had a lot of success with these. And I think, one of the things that we've seen in sort of modern software development tools is that things, almost everything launched now has APIs and integrations, so it's much easier than it ever used to be to sort of plug and play a bunch of different tools together and get them very nicely integrated. And so it's been exciting to watch that mature and to take advantage of that as we've done over the past couple of months. Next area that I wanted to talk about is DevOps. And I think there are many different definitions of DevOps. What it means for our team is, we're using it to sort of support a no surprises model. And what I mean by that is, I want the ops team to have visibility into what the development team is doing. When we push a release to production, I want the ops team to have visibility into what's in that release, to know when it's coming, to know what's in there, to know what to expect when we push to production. And the inverse of that is that I want the dev team to have insight into what the ops team is doing. And so what that means is when a release is going out to production, the development team should be able to watch our monitoring tools and make sure that response times are good, error rates are low, that we haven't seen anything unexpected. And so again, some of the tools that I mentioned earlier give the teams visibility into that. And an example is through GitHub Enterprise or github.com. Both of the tools support this. Anybody with access to the repository can subscribe and get email updates when there's a check-in. They can subscribe to an RSS feed when there's a check-in. They can do similar things in Jira where you can sort of be watching a project and get notified when something happens there. And so the goal is to give the entirety of the team, from maybe a product owner, even to a business owner, to our testing team, our production operations teams. They can all be watching those things. Everybody has sort of equal access to those materials that are available. And so a couple of specific things that we are doing to make sure that the DevOps is a success, in addition to sort of the transparency I mentioned earlier. We've been moving our public website program into cloud hosting environments, and so we have established at CMS an Amazon Web Services cloud environment, and so we've moved systems into there. And I think, one of the things that cloud has given us and the AWS has given us is, again, that great visibility into the environment. And pretty much everything in AWS has APIs, so we can watch environments get spun up and spun down. We can look at the performance of those environments, all of those sorts of things. In terms of monitoring, we have a standard set, again, going back to the point of standardization, we have a standard set of tools that we are using across all of our applications. So they might be built using a mixture of technologies, of languages, of database platforms, but we have a standard set of tools we can use to look into those applications. Some of those are back-end. So New Relic is an example. We can use New Relic to watch transaction times, to watch error rates, to watch memory usage on a server, all those sorts of back-office metrics that are really important to an ops team. We have a set of front-end tools, some analytics tools. We have Mixpanel, Chartbeat, and Google Analytics are three that I would mention. And those allow us to see what's happening on the front end. So we sort of get a 360-degree view of the applications. Again, as that data is being collected in production, the development team has access to those data. And, they can be using that data to determine if there are any issues, if there are any sort of usability problems we're seeing, and queuing up new issues, new user stories to put into our development backlog. And then lastly, we're doing a lot of work around what I'll call platform as a service, and that being sort of, for us, infrastructure as code. It means that we're developing a standard set of tools that allow us to basically create baseline systems and to, in an automated fashion, to provision, monitor, and update those cloud resources. So taking the need to manage sort of individualized servers out of the equation altogether, and treating our servers as assets in the same way we treat our code. And then culture. To me, culture ties a lot of this together. So, I think what we've seen is you can have a great set of tools, but if you don't have people sort of bought in on how to use them and what they mean and what's sort of behind them, you won't necessarily succeed. And so there are sort of two areas of focus for us. The first is really defining the roles that everyone plays on the team. So I've got two here called out, but we've done this sort of top to bottom on the team. So one is the product owner, and so each of our products or projects in the organization has an individual who is responsible, and that person sort of lives on the development side of the house. So they are coordinating the development activities. They are coordinating prioritization. They're working with the developers, the business owner, the operations team, the testing team, and sort of playing ringleader on all of the activities that lead through development up to a production launch. And then we also have the shared service owners. Those leads are on the ops side, and they manage all of the tooling that I've mentioned that's used both to put releases into production and to manage those. So things like continuous integration server, the version control tool, the analytics tool, all those sorts of things. Each of those has an owner. And I've talked about this a little bit, but really driving the point of transparency. And so, as I've mentioned, the goal is that all staff can have read access to the code repository, and they can subscribe to those notifications. It's really only the developers that have write access, but everybody can be watching what's going on. Any important activities, we are working on automating the notifications of those to HipChat, and so we've got things like when a deployment happens, when there's a PagerDuty alert on, maybe an error threshold, those sorts of things. They get posted into the room so everybody can see them and people can be, tracking exactly what's going on. And then, also the change requests, the defects, the documentation is going into that JIRA system so that everybody can see it. And so driving the point of moving away from, sending around documents through email and getting to sort of the single source of the truth in the tool. So we've done a lot of work here, and I think have had a lot of success, but this really requires, I think, very consistent reinforcement, and so that's something that we continue to work on an ongoing basis. And then I'll talk a little bit about, we've implemented an Agile lifecycle, so our agency has a system development lifecycle, as almost every team does. We've sort of taken that, we've streamlined it and stripped it down to the essentials for our Agile development process. And again, this for us was about standardization, about creating a repeatable process, and allowing for knowledge transfer. And the example I gave earlier is sort of a shared Scrum Master. We want those resources to be able to roll off of one project when it's completion and hop on another one, and to not have months and months of time to learn how the process works for that particular project. And I'll also mention we've had a lot of success. We out of the Agile lifecycle we're using, we have been able to produce the artifacts that every federal agency is required to. So the documentation for security auditors, the audit trail to document software releases and change control. We've succeeded sort of with all of that. And so this will, this is included in the slides here, but a couple of things I would highlight about this process that we have put together. There are 4 phases to it. They sort of overlap between a project and a product, and the idea is that a project might end, but a product would still be in production in O&M phase for a while. So we've sort of shown that overlap here. The initiating process is where a new idea comes in, and there's a decision-making process to decide if we're going to proceed with that project. If we do, we kick into the sprint roadmap and we assign the resources to the team. We lay out a plan of what the sprints will look like to get to a launch, and then we begin executing. And for us, we are using a 2-week sprint cycle. The idea is that this is iterative. We're going through those sprints When we get sort of the minimum viable product and we're ready to launch, we go through and launch the project to production. And then we're in O&M. And importantly, when we are in O&M, as long as the project is active and we're doing maintenance on that project, we will continue to use sort of a 2-week sprint to do that maintenance. And then that would continue as long as the project was out and live. So a couple areas, I mentioned at the beginning, what I've talked you guys through is where our current areas of focus are as we look out over the next couple of months and heading into next year. So these are a couple of things that are on our radar as really important things that we need to sort of keep getting better at Agile and keep getting better at the streamlining, standardizing, and automating. So the first is CI/CD, that's continuous integration, continuous delivery. We're standing up a Jenkins environment as sort of a shared service. And again, that will provide common services to all of the development teams. So when they need builds to be done, there will be a standard environment they can use. In conjunction with that, we're standing up Selenium, which is an automated testing tool that will be able to run a lot of sort of UI tests that the teams need to do to be sure that they are ready for a move to production. So those two are pretty tightly integrated, and again, that'll be a shared service. We're looking in general at our projects about starting to decompose them into reusable microservices, so things that teams would otherwise need to write again and again. An example is we're looking to build a standardized geography service, something that does zip code to county mappings, that does address validation, those sorts of things, that can provide driving directions. So we're building that as a shared service and building that in the microservices model. And then to support those microservices, we're standing up an API gateway so that we can essentially have something that would give us visibility into that microservices environment. It'll give us token provisioning so we know which applications are using those APIs. It'll give us analytics on how they're being used. And so again, as we look out, these are a couple of key areas of our focus as we head into the next calendar year. And I think with that, I'll go ahead and stop there and see if we have any questions.
That's great, John. Thank you so much for just how specific you were with a lot of these. We do have a couple of very quick questions, and then we'll move on to hear from Chris. But our first question comes from Annette, who wanted to know, are your product owners that you described, are they typically government employees, or do you also use contractors?
So our product owners are government employees. They are on my team, and our team has basically two primary. The organization structure sort of matches what I outlined in the presentation. We have sort of an ops team, and we have a product development team. So the product owners are feds. The scrum masters and the project managers maybe feds, but they're often contractors as well. And so it's a sort of a nicely integrated team between the feds and contractors.
Gotcha. And maybe one more question before we move on. So you obviously work with a blend of your staff and contractors and probably a multitude of vendors. How does the product owner in the DevOps side of the equation get those vendors and contractors up to speed or in sync on some of the cultural and DevOps points that you made?
Yes, for one, I think we've been really, really lucky, and we've gotten a whole bunch of teams engaged that really get where we're trying to go, and are on board with us. I do think it's important. We've been working hard to get our team and our contractor teams sort of trained and get to a place of knowledge sharing, and so that's something that we continue to work on, is making sure everybody has an understanding of what we're trying to do and how we're getting there. So again, that's something that I would say really requires sort of continuous monitoring and attention and a lot of sort of communication. One of the things I'll mention is that we meet with a lot of these development teams every couple of weeks and just sit down face-to-face and sort of talk through what's going on, and that's a great opportunity to raise questions and see if anybody has any sort of, a misunderstanding about things and sort of course correct on a regular basis, and we've had a lot of success doing that.
Yeah, I bet that's pretty crucial. Well, thanks for that. And so, Chris, I'm going to move to you now. Tell us a little bit about the things you've been learning at Appian and what you've seen working in the government space.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you very much, and Wyatt, appreciate the opportunity. Everybody, it's exciting to be here. It's exciting to see this dialogue really taking off in the federal environment, where we're seeing a lot of success in Agile delivery and the way that agencies are now able to both deploy capability more rapidly in an environment to improve customer satisfaction, but also just larger scale success of delivery in the federal environment. A little bit about Appian. We are a software company that is actually our worldwide headquarters is here in the DC area. We started in the federal government, and Agile is really in our DNA. We are a BPM platform that has been constructed to be an Agile platform for delivering custom applications. What's also important is that we use Agile internally to build the software product that we're delivering to customers that is then used for Agile development. So it's an interesting dynamic that we see it both internally with our own software, but then externally with very large-scale programs across the commercial and federal space. We are doing large case management systems in particular that I think apply themselves beautifully to the Agile format, like at the OCC, where we are the system managing the chartering and licensing of every federal bank across the United States. So diving into the business of government, we've got a real heart for it. And what we've seen over the past number of years is that a lion's share of the budget, time, and energy really has been placed on the maintenance of IT systems, leaving very little time for innovation. What I'd like to talk about is taking a look at why that's occurring and seeing how Agile can help really turn that around. Not only is it eating up the dollars because custom development is expensive, traditionally it's also been very time-consuming. And that time-consuming piece drives a lot of factors. It drives the dollars, it drives customer satisfaction, and it drives the fact that a lot of systems that when they're deployed in the more traditional waterfall sense are out of date and not meeting the requirements by the time that they're delivered, let alone security vulnerabilities from an ongoing security threat profile. So our entire approach is to take a look at the platform by which we're delivering custom applications with the Appian platform and internally to be able to deliver value faster. And that is key for what we're trying to accomplish both internally and externally with our agency partners. So how we've really focused on it is the classic iterative development, bringing forward very fast innovation and continuous improvement throughout. I think you heard a lot of things that John was saying about standardization and culture and driving this innovation forward through Agile. We're trying to do that as well and have seen a lot of agencies really succeed. And one of the key facets to each of these touch points is maintaining a touch point to value. What is the value that you are delivering with the code that you are providing to your constituents, to your customers, to your project stakeholders? If you're delivering value, that's going to bring forward a culture where people are excited to participate, that they are buying off on this new method of delivering and ultimately give you a better end product as well. So I just love this picture. It's a very simplified view, but traditionally with like cars, you're building something out at a long stage and you're not delivering to the very end. With Agile, what we want to do is deliver that value at each step along the way in order to make people's lives better, in order to provide some value that is improving the mission and the business of government, and then improving that over time so that you have an engaged constituency and driving this new way of doing business in IT delivery. So a couple things that we believe Agile development should be. And it's our core values that everything we try to do with our platform is to make Agile development easy and powerful. Easy to build applications, to use them with limited training, and really importantly, really easy to change, because the government's mission changes, our policies, our legislation, our reporting requirements, and the expectations of our customers, be it citizenry, soldiers, or just agency officials. Those needs change, and our information technology needs to be able to keep up with that change. We also need it to be powerful. Powerful is very important in that it needs to be able to scale to the size of government. Some of the programs that we are running are huge. The things that John is trying to tackle at CMS, it touches so many people's lives that it really is something amazing. And because of that, we need to be able to ramp up to handle that scale, but we also need to make sure that it's secure and current. And what's another challenge that I would definitely promote some thinking about is that we need to deliver products that are able to change but are also current and taking advantage of the new methods people are leveraging the technology, like mobile devices. A lot of agencies have not yet cracked that nut to use it effectively. Some are doing great, but what we recognize is that where and how people are accessing technology has been changing, and what you need to deliver should be able to work on all of those devices, be it on a laptop, a mobile device, or even maybe on an Apple Watch now that people are wearing. So a couple quick things that we're doing and that we use internally to deliver custom applications successfully. One is the rapid realization of kind of the expectations and getting fast feedback from the constituents. We use our own platform to build real-time UIs and prototype those almost live with the stakeholders in order to show them what it will look like, but also being able to deploy in that same environment so that we're not just showing something visual, but we're showing something visible that will also execute. I think you heard from John also, you want to build out reusable components. There shouldn't be a lot of one-offs because a lot of the tools and pieces that are used to build and deploy enterprise applications are common and should be able to be leveraged across a full development program across multiple teams. Taking a look at out-of-box integrations, SOAs and web services and APIs that allow you to exchange data very dynamically. And cloud. Appian has been in the cloud since 2007. In order to scale and to be adaptable and to have the cost efficiencies, I think cloud has truly proven to be a game changer from an infrastructure and support perspective, and it's definitely something that we've been working against for the Appian platform as well. The second piece is model-driven development. Agile is key on team delivery, and so those team players, and we'll talk a little bit more about those, need to interact in the same environment and have common definition and a taxonomy to work with. So we like to have visual environments. John talked a lot about transparency as well. You want an environment that all players can speak the same language. We do that leveraging a drag and drop design tool where you are drawing applications and drawing process flows and being able to see a WYSIWYG forms designer so that both the analysts and the developers and the stakeholders can speak the same language and look at the same thing when you're prototyping. We also want to limit the round trips between tools, because if you're in too many tools, you're going to lose a lot of that transparency and the collaboration, which is also key. Cross-team collaboration really will help drive both culture and speed in these programs. And then embracing change. Applications that we deliver in the federal government need to be able to be adaptable, and not adaptable in a half year or in months. It should be adaptable within weeks or days for key components. Part of that and what we do is write once, deploy anywhere. Our drag and drop code that we're developing in that environment is also deployable on laptops to Androids to tablets and iOS and phones. We think that's very important so that you don't have whole nother teams replicating the applications that you are delivering. It's going to increase that cost, complexity, and time in order to meet the emerging needs. We too use automated deployment tools, automated testing tools. We have built an impact analysis tool for changes to applications within our platform that is, I think, vital to scaling up large-scale Agile programs. And then you also need to take into account across the board that continuous security enhancements to meet the emerging needs across the various platforms that each of the agencies need to support. So we really focus internally and with our projects and programs where we work with our commercial and federal customers on high-performing teams. We really try to keep them to small teams, generally about the size of 7 plus or minus 2 people depending on the program. We can scale up multiple teams when you have larger projects that you're delivering, but we try to keep them at that size. Obviously cross-functional, and this is where you have the analysts, the developers, and testers all working together in that group so that you have a cadence and opportunity to drive forward quickly. And then teams need to be empowered, and I think this is one of the most important things that agencies can do, which is really empower these teams to make decisions. Have a product owner that can make the decision and not have to go through many, many different people and get caught in analysis paralysis when you need to make decisions about what you are building and delivering out. The idea behind Agile is to deliver something of value and then improve it. And so you need an environment where teams are empowered to go make, to deliver capability and to actually fail.
I'm sorry, we appear to be having a little technical difficulty. I know that some of you are tuning in saying you've lost the audio, and I'm just going to check here with Chris to make sure if he's still able to. Looks like his line dropped. I really apologize for this. He's dialing back in momentarily, so we'll be with you in just a second. Apologize for the delay. Again, we'll be picking up from where he left off, so we promise you won't miss anything. But we are trying to reestablish our connection with Chris as we speak. and I'm told he's dialing in now. Once again, as we're waiting for him to come back, encourage the audience to submit questions. And if you're using the console that you have before you, and we'll be working on getting our audio back as we speak. And we'll look at also...
Hi there.
Here we go. Very good. We're glad to have you back. I know we technically lost you there for a minute. Sorry about that to our audience. Go ahead and continue.
Thank you. I apologize. It looks like we need to do a little more agile development with the telephone lines. So at Appian, we are really focused on providing a unified platform. What we see in a lot of arenas is that all these tool sets that you need to build enterprise application, rules, reports, various interfaces, mobile development, the cloud and collaboration components can be a lot of different tool sets that really create kind of a Frankenstein architecture that isolates people off and limits the collaboration and transparency that's required both in an enterprise application delivery, but also within Agile team development as well. So that's what we've been building into a single platform that we leverage across our team. So I've brought two quick examples of case studies in the federal government that we've seen some great success. One is actually out of Health and Human Services, where we have had a large case management system that required a lot of applications to be processed. In fact, we processed over 2 million cases. What was amazing about this program is we're scaling to 50,000 cases a day, but we built an end-to-end case management system with 3.5 consultants in just 22 days. What was even more exciting is we kept that pace of delivery through the first year of the program, delivering new work every 2 weeks across the platform. And so they actually had over 20 production releases of a major case management system while maintaining the auditability and the case files that they were managing. The next one is actually out of acquisition. And traditionally, I'd say the acquisition space has been underserved by information technology. But what we're seeing across the Department of Defense and with DISA specifically is they have built out their next generation procurement system. And this is a system that is secure cloud in the DoD cloud environment. It is actually mobile enabled for contract officers to be able to review contracts, to approve them, to get data and statistics about the large-scale procurements that are going through. And it's been built on an Agile framework where the government has developers and contractors worked in joint teams and delivering production releases every 4 weeks to improve that environment. So another area that I think has been a highlight both for the DoD and how it can work within an enterprise architecture like the Department of Defense, still providing the documentation, like John said. Agile doesn't mean there isn't documentation, but it doesn't mean it needs to slow you down and deliver capability quickly. So these are just two quick examples that we've seen some great success. We love the fact that people are embracing Agile and delivering more rapidly. In the federal government, where we and I have spent my career and have a heart for the business of government, it's so exciting to see where we can deliver greater customer service and value, but at the same time being much more agile to respond to emerging needs and doing it at a lower cost point so that we can turn that 80-20 rule around where we have 80% time and dollars to drive innovation, to allow government workers to be thought leaders and knowledge workers as opposed to trying to keep the older systems up in play across the IT architecture. So with that, Wyatt, I'll turn it back to you and appreciate everyone's time and effort. Here's my contact info in case there's any additional information that we can provide.
Agreed, Chris. Thanks very much. And again, I invite our audience to use your Q&A window on your console to submit some questions to Chris and to John. And Chris, I do have one question for you. I think the folks involved with IT and are familiar with building things in a project management environment kind of can get why moving to an agile cycle makes sense. But in many cases, I think folks that have well-established business processes don't visit this that often. And I'm wondering, what's your experience or advice to those on the business process side that the IT teams are trying to meet to help them get further along, further up to speed in adopting sort of an agile development cycle, to work with the IT teams?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and thanks for bringing it forward. What's been interesting is there really has been a kind of break between the business owners and IT for a very long time, and I think part of that is kind of a shared understanding and taxonomy of what the business users need, those that own the business processes and know how things get done, with the IT that's supporting that infrastructure. And so it's been traditionally so painful to build out those processes in an application that the business side doesn't necessarily want to go through that again. So I think what's neat is being able to say, that's all right, these processes need to change, and you can actually build them much more efficiently with real data and have input into how the IT is developed and delivered in smaller increments. And that really builds up that culture where the business side now is seeing the value very quickly. And I think that's why the first project that you provide and that first initiation and delivery needs to include something of value to the business process owner so that they can see that their voice is heard and that you are trying to support the business in a manner that will help them over the long run.
And certainly some of the folks that we've talked to, even if you focus on a specific feature and deliver that in short cycle and they see that coming, it sounds like there's credibility built early on, and they see why they should have more of a stake in being part of that continuous process. But appreciate that. So I'm going to switch back to John for a second. John, one of the questions I think that invariably comes up has to do with kind of the budgeting process and funding process as you move into this environment. And I know you talked a little bit about having the right contract vehicles, but what was your experience of how to get that sort of budgeting and billing cycles more closely in sync with the work that comes along with Agile development?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question. I would say we're doing a lot of learning on that particular area at the moment. I think we have had some success, and maybe two things I would mention. One is we're doing a little bit of experimentation with the contract types than we've done in the past, and so we've got one contract that we're doing now that's firm fixed price, and one that's a mix of firm fixed price and time and materials, just to see how those translate to the Agile development world. And so, we're sort of doing early experimentation there. The other thing I would mention is on some of the projects that I've outlined, we've actually brought on some really innovative, like subcontracting teams. And so, that's enabled us to sort of scope that subcontract to sort of an initial small dollar amount to begin with and see if we've got things right. And so that might be an approach that I would recommend for teams that are looking to get their feet wet on this. Again, having that done through sort of a subcontract vehicle gave us a little bit more flexibility than we would have had there otherwise.
Appreciate that. So another question from our audience, given the scale of the programs and projects that you're working on at CMS, it would seem that whereas Agile tends to be kind of a one would think of as a linear process. I imagine that you have large volumes of work, very pressing deadlines to get a lot done, and the need for probably parallel processing work. How do you sort of take Agile development sort of multi-dimensionally so that you can map out, a lot of projects simultaneously and make sure they're fitting together and still sort of keep within the spirit of Agile development?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say two things on that. One, I think to anybody that's looking to adopt or adapt Agile, what we did is we started real small. We started with some projects that were not sort of in the critical path of open enrollment, which many of our programs have. And so we sort of demonstrated with a smaller scale project that we were able to use these methods and to get a product built and launched and demonstrate that it scaled and worked really well. So I think picking something to demonstrate that this would work that is not your most important project is really key. So I think that's probably the major thing that I would say on that.
I appreciate that. You also talked about future enhancements. One of the areas that you talked about was microservices and beginning to decompose your applications. Can you talk a little bit more about that? So after you've kind of, it sounds like developed things, you're also sort of breaking them back down. And how do you kind of approach that process and then keep track of it all?
Sure. So, I read a really good article, I think it was, I can't remember who it was by, a couple of weeks ago, but they talked about the fact that, it's a really bad idea on a brand new program to sort of build microservices from scratch. So what you want to do is sort of build the system you need to build, launch it, and then figure out, if you could maybe decompose it. So I think that's the approach that we have taken. What we're doing to decide where we go with that is to look at those sorts of things that a couple teams may be working on at the same time and building. And so the geography service I mentioned is a really good one. We have five systems, I think, that need to sort of do geocoding of addresses and directions and those sorts of things. And everybody was doing them in a slightly different way. Everybody had their own zip code database, and so that was one where, we did what we needed to do to get out the launch and get into production. Then we took a step back and said, this is an area that's sort of ripe for consolidation, and so to create a single source of the truth. And so that's really how we've driven that. And I think our goal is to get this new Geography Services API out, and then we're going to look around, potentially pick another candidate to do that and get that out, and to just sort of iterate through this to see where we have those opportunities. But one thing that we're not doing, again, just because it feels like sort of an opportunity for overthinking things, is to redo everything we're doing as microservices. We're trying to be very targeted in our approach to this problem.
Great. I have a question here from Rupesh, and I think this could go to both of you, and I'll start with Chris. Just what are some of maybe 2 or 3 good and bad lessons learned with DevOps in the Agile development process?
Yeah, I think actually we were just talking about one of the difficult ones. Very early on, I think having that larger picture view of the program that you're tackling, I think it's the last couple answers that John had were very important. We've seen very good success from initiating very small, short contracts and short deliveries to prove it out and then slowly build up. So we've seen month-long contracts move to 3-month contracts, move to 6-month contracts as you prove out the Agile and your ability to deliver. You do need to decompose the different components so that you are not stepping on each other. So there's a certain maturity level to doing an Agile project, to an Agile program with multiple work streams. And what you want to do is make sure that you have decomposed enough and that you have some standardization of pieces that you share across those before moving forward. that has proven to be of great success for us in our engagements, how we're delivering and developing, and how we're ramping up the number of teams working on different components. And then the other piece is just what you said. What are the pieces that are shareable? We have, by nature of our product and how we have decomposed an application to various components, we have kind of an instant question of what is the piece that I'm building right now, that I'm constructing, potentially usable across our other work streams, and making sure that we're modularizing it in a way that can be reused and exposed out to everyone else. That's how we're handling it kind of from a platform perspective, so that instantaneously you have it available to the other development streams as well.
Great. And John, any additional thoughts?
I'd agree with all that. I think going back to the question before, I think the piece around tracking at the project level, but also the portfolio level is really important. As you decompose these pieces, you need to be able to look at the bigger picture as well. And so that's where a lot of the work that we're doing in our Jira system to have a portfolio program project view of the world that's again single source of truth, but different views of the world has been really, really helpful for us, and we're moving forward on doing more of that.
Well, yeah, and John, sorry, Kawhi, one more thing. John mentioned a really good point, too, that, like with the zip code lookup and other components, we really do take a look up front. One of our kind of lessons learned is that the data that you need to be able to have access and report on up front, and leverage that in building out a lot of the design, and then the processes that are used to pull that data in, to work with the data, and then ultimately to report out or send it out to other systems. And so I think that's a really valuable tool in making sure that you understand all the data that is required and mapping that out at the portfolio level view when you're tackling a big program.
Well, that's a great point. Well, John and Chris, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there at this point. But thanks so much for sharing some of the many insights that you shared with our audience today. I really appreciate that. And also want to thank our audience once again for tuning in today to FedScoop's Government Technology Webinar Series. And of course, would like to thank and acknowledge Appian for making today's program possible. Just a reminder, our program today will be available on demand within a day from now or so, and will be available for up to 90 days. So I, again, would encourage you to share the link you received with your colleagues. They get a chance to hear some of these great lessons that we heard today, as well as get the advantage of the slides that come along with it. And again, just a reminder, you should have on your slide console the ability to download today's slides for your permanent reference. So with that, look for more of our coverage on Agile development and all of our government technology coverage at FedScoop. And on behalf of all of us here at FedScoop and Scoop News Group, my name is Wyatt Cash, and thanks again for being with us today.